The latest concerning the Kremlin and the drones. A bombshell revealed by ex-CIA official. U.S. made the decision on Kremlin drone attack, he said. The aim of the attack was to provoke Russia into a major escalation of the conflict, ex-CIA official reveals. This is astonishing. The revelation about the drone attacks on the Kremlin on May 3rd is causing a stir, which is expected to bring chain reactions. Former CIA intelligence officer Larry Johnson claims that the decision to strike the Kremlin with drones was made by the U.S. Wednesday, March 5th attack, which may have triggered Russian President Vladimir Putin, was thwarted by electronic warfare systems that disabled the drones before they could reach their target. Attack with U.S. fingerprint, he said, according to Johnson. The attack bears the imprint of the Biden administration and the U.S. military-industrial complex because, quote, decisions about such attacks are not made in Kiev, but in Washington, he said. He said Washington needs to make it clear that we know, end quote. Johnson told the Summit News website, although the attack, which Ukraine denies involvement in, failed to hit its tactical target, it was highly symbolic, quote-unquote, according to the former CIA official. And he said, the attack did not cause significant damage. However, my view is that with this embolden Russia, not create fear, resentment, or division. There are others who believe that Russia is portrayed as weak and this will create internal problems. I'm just noting that the reactions of former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, as well as the members of the parliament, were strong and angry, and they all called for escalating retaliation against Ukraine. So I think in many ways it failed, the former CIA official said. He also added that the attack exudes desperation and is an attempt to provoke Russia into a major escalation, quote, to get the United States more deeply involved in this conflict, end quote, is what he said. Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. denounced the attempted drone attack as a dangerous escalation. Kennedy Jr. said, imagine how we would react if Russian-backed forces launched a drone attack on the Capitol, that is, D.C. We must stop these deranged efforts to escalate the war, Kennedy said. And he added, after the successful de-escalation of the Cuban Missile Crisis, then U.S. President John Kennedy warned that Russia should not in the future be forced to choose between national humiliation and nuclear war. We have to listen to his advice, Kennedy Jr. said. Russia blamed the U.S. from the start. Russia blamed the U.S. for the attack from the start. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov appeared confident that the U.S. was behind the drone attack on the Kremlin and the attempt on Russia President Vladimir Putin. Referring to the drone attack on the Kremlin, Peskov pointed out that the goals of the special military operation in Ukraine do not change. As he said, Russia has multiple options available to it to respond to the Ukraine attack, stating that the U.S. is the one that chooses the targets and Ukraine is the one that is simply implementing the American plans, calling their argument that they have no involvement ridiculous in this attack. He said the efforts of both Kiev and Washington to deny this fact are ridiculous. We know very well that decisions on such terrorist actions are not made in Kiev. Received in Washington, Kiev does what it is told. Often, even the goals themselves are not determined by Kiev, but by Washington, and then they are transferred to Kiev for Kiev to fulfill them, Peskov emphasized, mentioning that a special committee is thoroughly investigating the attack on the Kremlin. Asked if Moscow believed Washington was involved in what happened, Peskov said, certainly. The White House denies. We do not encourage Ukraine to strike Russian soil. So the U.S. is not encouraging Ukraine to strike targets on Russian soil, said John Kirby, the White House national security spokesman. Following Moscow's accusations that the U.S. was behind the drone attack on the Kremlin, Kirby, after calling those claims false, argued that the U.S. neither encourages Kiev to strike targets outside Ukraine's border, nor will it allow it to do so through the procurement of the necessary weapon systems. It's recalled that earlier, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov underlined that the U.S. is behind the attack on the Kremlin. China, red lines crossed, she said. The position that the Ukrainian drone attack on the Kremlin crossed the red lines that have been established here and around more than a year on the war front in Ukraine, the Chinese newspaper Global Times stated in the article, saying this incident crossed the red lines of the Ukrainian crisis. After more than a year of the Russian-Ukrainian war, neither side had attacked government residences and leaders, the publication said. The newspaper estimates that Moscow will retaliate massively to this attack, and it will retaliate, also hitting government buildings in Ukraine. Some Chinese experts and analysts believe that the attack on the Kremlin is most likely linked to Ukrainian extremists who favor prolonging the Russian-Ukrainian conflict and who want to force the high-ranking Ukrainian officials to continue the war. It's equally possible that there was support or encouragement from foreign hegemonic powers for this operation, writes the Global Times. The publication even talks about confrontations inside Ukraine about what should be the future of the Ukrainian crisis, with confrontations growing inside Ukraine. The conflict between those who support peace and those who want the continuation of the war is escalating, Wang Xiaoquan, an expert of the Chinese Academy Institute of Russian, Eastern European and Central Asian Studies, told the newspaper of Social Sciences, arguing that it's developing into a great test for both sides, the war between them, he said. Guardian says Moscow is not behind Kremlin attack. The drone attack against the Kremlin is cited in an analysis by the British newspaper The Guardian, which argues that the question of who is behind it may not be answered until the end of the war in Ukraine or even after it. The publication states that the aim of the attack was not to kill Russian President Putin, but as a drone that exploded over the Senate dome was not armed. It points out that several times in the past targets have been hit on Russian soil. It emphasizes that it is remarkable the fact that it turned out that Moscow does not have those air defense systems that could prevent a drone from getting so close to the Kremlin, and it does not rule out that the drone was operated from a secret location inside Russia and within a few kilometers of Moscow. Panic and confusion, but it's surprising how many people want to speculate about this provocative operation in the Kremlin, given the concern over videos showing drones flying over the Senate dome, which houses Vladimir Putin's presidential residence, before they were neutralized. Nor is it obvious that Russia needs an excuse to escalate the war, having increased its bombing in the last week amid fears that Ukrainian air defenses are running out of firepower. Now, even Margarita Simoyan, head of Russia's RT network, who called for Russia's action against Zelensky, expressed reservations. He said if it was a cunning plan from Moscow, then the situation would be very different now. Drone flights have been banned in dozens of regions of Russia, while GPS is blocked in Moscow. In ride-hailing apps, taxis appear to be on the river, a reaction that probably indicates panic and increased electronic security rather than a planned escalation, the report said. There's a precedent. Consider the other scenario. Ukraine and rebel groups aligned with it have developed their capabilities during the war. Drone attacks inside Russia, sometimes over long distances, are nothing new. In February, a Ukrainian drone attempted to hit a natural gas facility about 80 kilometers southwest of Moscow, with Russia releasing photos of the downed Ukrainian UJ-22 drone. This is an important find, as this type of drone also appears to be flying towards the Kremlin in the second attack. A video of the Kremlin attack shows a drone coming from the left just before it explodes. The explosion is small, suggesting the drone may not be armed. Two people climb on the dome and do not appear to be affected by the explosion. In that sense, it cannot be seen as an assassination attempt against targeting Putin, The Guardian points out. This is from Banking News. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.